Here we are. We're recording.
We're recording. What? We're
What?
recording. I just like coming to this call with this random person. Somebody's like, "We're recording."
Yeah, I feel obligated by law to tell you that I am recording this conversation. No, I don't think. Yeah, you know what?
Actually, in Canada, well, in Ontario, you do not. Actually, no. Through all of Canada, there was even although the other person has to. The person doing the recording must be part of the conversation. However, there's an interesting case happened in BC where there was a person who was trying to ransom, I think it was a child, and the police recorded the conversation as as the ransomer was calling the mother, and then the ransomer's lawyer argued that because he was talking to the mother, the police were not a part of the conversation, therefore were not legally allowed to record it. Which almost worked. And then the judge decided to rule that, well, if you are holding someone for ransom, it is appropriate to expect that the police will be listening in on any conversation. Therefore, he probably, if he was a reasonable person, would know the police are listening, and therefore the police have a right to record in that situation.
And that's kind of common sense. I mean, the lawyer's doing good work, I guess. But I do appreciate that the judge in this instance was like, that's kind of bullshit. But here's why.
I mean, especially seeing the U.S., I think it is very important that we hold our, police forces to a very high standard. Absolutely. And make sure they are following the law and respecting rights. And I think the fact that, the defense lawyer was able to argue that is very good for that, because as soon as you throw that out, well,
yeah.
I have many friends who are defense lawyers. This is always what they say. Like, a lot of my clients are scum, and like I hate them. But I want to make sure, and I'm going to do my best to defend them, because I want to make sure the police are doing their job. The police are never stepping our rights, because as soon as the police overstep our rights, that's when society goes to shit. And so
that's a very good perspective with regards to crown attorneys, right? Or whatever.
Defense lawyers.
Defense lawyers, sorry, not the crown.
Yeah.
But all lawyers. But yes, I think that's a good perspective instead of the the gut reaction of like, this sleazy guy just trying to get someone off. It's more just making sure the police are doing their job. Speaking of which, I don't know if you can hear it. I hear sirens outside.
I can hear that.
But there's also children playing out in the neighborhood. So, I mean, it's not bad. I guess. But, so anyways, Propspectives.
Wait, you mean this isn't a podcast about police?
Yeah, I know, right? This is Lostspectives. Yeah, no, so we're going to talk about rugby soon.
So I think keep listening, and in 45 minutes, we're going to get to rugby.
Okay. Yeah, exactly. We'll get there. But for anyone listening outside of Canada, so that's what our laws are with regards to recording conversations, at least in our province, and also in BC, it turns out. So nice. Cool. That was a neat little tidbit. So what are we talking about today, Dan?
So today we are talking about injuries. The question is, am I training not to get hurt, or am I training to recover from being hurt?
Yes.
And the answer is, you're a prop. You don't train.
Yeah, you're the non-training prop. When you're our size, every day is leg day. Which is what I think.
Like getting out of bed, that's a workout right there. Done.
Right there. It is. Despite that, we do actually train. Amazingly enough, I'm actually got a great personal trainer through the rugby team right now. Mac, shout out to Mac. He's doing great stuff with my near non-existent squat.
I mean, you're squatting like 4 plates now. I wouldn't call that near non-existent.
Yeah, but I mean, it's not your like bajillion pounds that you do. So
I mean, if you said you were doing like 5 reps on it, that means you're getting like that's pretty good. 4 plates, 5 reps.
And it was actually even the last one. We upped a bit, so it's kind of nice. It's great. My traps are starting to come back. You can't see it on the thing, but that's cool. My shoulders are.
You can take your shirt off if you want.
The screen's not large enough. But that, so we do train. It does happen from time to time.
Yeah. So once a year, the props get together, do a squat, and be like, "Whew, we're good for this year."
All right, boys. But yeah. So, man, training is actually super, super important to I feel, to not get injured. However, okay, so here's the thing. Experience plays a big deal for me too, and I'm not even going to this is not even going to be a good segue, but I'm just starting with an anecdote. When I started playing rugby, I was incredibly fit. I was also, I think, a type 2, I want to say 275, and I was light looking. So, but I was also, like, I had been training for like a year, 2 years, whatever, like hard, and had dropped a ton of weight, and was very strong and much faster than I was, experienced with, and I just starting rugby, and so things went great for a while, and then I hyperextended my leg, and that was like the first injury of like what happened to be many. And I don't think I've ever really been hurt in a game. It's always been training for me that has actually hurt me, like the rugby practices. But man, yeah, that fucked me up because I was a good sprinter too, and then I like just ridiculously destroyed a hamstring on the. Okay, so Robinson Field, right? There's like that midfield dip that's only about 3 feet in diameter, and it goes down 6 inches, but that's just enough. Like I hit that at full stride and just like hyperextended my leg.
It's not even 6 inches, but because there's 6 inches, you'd be able to see it. Like
Yeah.
you can't. It's hard to see because it's like the grass hides it because the lawnmower goes right over it and keeps it level.
Ooh.
But then you hit it and you're like, oh shit! I think it's only like 2 inches, but that's enough.
That's
enough.
I felt the pop like on the back of my leg, and I'm like, oh shit, And so it's that began my string of rugby injuries, weirdly enough. And,
so if that's your worst injury, I can share my worst injury. My worst injury is to my pride.
I have no pride, Dad.
It was okay. So actually, I already told the story of my worst injury earlier in the podcast, which is the time I tried to show off, and then just felt that pop in my hamstring. So for those of you who don't remember or are just tuning in now, yeah, I'm going to tell you again because I like the sound of my own voice. Why else am I doing a podcast? Right. So there's a training exercise that's really used to get explosive power in your sprints, and especially in your like starting to run. And you have people hold on to you and try to hold you back as you sprint, which can work very poorly when you're paired up against me. And I just sort of lean back and hold on with one arm, and you can't move.
Call that the anchor.
But then when it's my turn to sprint, I'm like, this is my exercise. My legs are so strong. I like had everyone grab onto me, and I'm like, I'm going to sprint now, and you guys are barely going to slow me down. And it worked for like 5 steps, and I was like starting to really get in, and then suddenly my hamstring went pop, and I'm like, oh, I'm falling down now.
The mind is willing, but the body is weak. Oh man. Yeah. So here's the thing though, right? We both note hammies, tearing hammies as an issue. And I've torn like both legs, like I've fucked them up. Big dudes, I found out between that and like the foot, like the plantar fasciitis there, which was my second worst one, which laid me out long enough to fucking ever, that shit never goes away. And then it does, and then you're like, oh cool, and then you hurt it again. But yeah, apparently like the big guys like us, it's hammies all the way, followed by feet, then calves. It's leg stuff. It's the big muscles, right? Like the movement muscles. Mm-hmm. Not based on any study, but just like from my experience.
No, I mean, yeah, that's very common. Like, and if you actually look, forwards tend to get a lot more leg injuries. The most common injury among forwards is thigh hematomas. And
what's a thigh hematoma?
That's really, basically when it's a fancy word for a bruise in some ways, but basically like really bad ones when your leg gets all messed up from getting hit. It's not generally tend to be serious, but basically like legs are where people get injured, and most injuries happen in contact, but even like a lot of the leg injuries, when I think of like the other time I threw out my hamstring was when this like really like incredible prop who's like handsome and amazing and powerful just like tackled me from behind and took me out of a rugby tournament that I really wanted to go to.
Oh, sorry. You have an ability when you tell the story to both flatter and shame me at the same time. I do remember that though too, because it was at training, and I didn't get you down the first time, and I wound up on the ground, and you were above me, and I was like, no, I'm just gonna fucking grab onto this guy, and I remember like in a really awkward way, just pulling you down, and then I'm sorry, you hurt yourself.
It's your fault. It's because you're just so incredibly strong and powerful and a great rugby player. If you were a worse rugby player, you would have let me just run through. So it's your fault for being good at rugby. How's that for the like building you up and shaming you? Say, yeah. This is clearly my version of nagging.
Yeah, that's totally it, dude. You fucking nailed it. Oh, but I could see in contact getting. Okay, so here's the thing. So you tell me. Let me ask you a question here. We're big guys. Physics is kind of on our side. So in most forms of contact, right? Like I took a direct chest hit on the last game I played, or the one before it, way back when, from this dude who used to play football for like the Red Blacks or something, and he just squared me up and ran, and I was like, well, I can't tackle this guy. He's coming in low and fast, and it was crazy. So I just thought I'd be like a wall, and just like I'm just gonna sit here and get speed bumped by this dude, and he hit me square in the chest, but it didn't hurt. I was like, okay, cool. So it's like, it's weird things like that give you that sort of false sense of, you'll be okay. But then the weirdest things injure you. But for the most part, I don't think I've ever really injured myself going into contact too much. Really? I don't know. But that's because we're big. Like, how about you? Like, you're a big dude. You're my size. And I don't know, man. How many times do you hurt yourself going into contact?
I very rarely hurt myself when I am the one going into contact.
Right.
Usually, if I'm going to get hurt in contact, it's when someone is hitting me from behind.
Okay.
Because that's when things tend to go more topsy-turvy. So
fair enough.
Because really, like, if you look at it, 60 to 65% of rugby injuries happen in the second half. Why? Because when you have good form, you're generally not going to get injured. I mean, shit happens. It can happen. But, like, your chances are basically almost doubled of being injured in the second half because you're getting tired. Yeah. You just get into a wrong position and something goes and you're like, fuck. As a big guy, that's a little bit less likely, but someone hits you from a weird angle because, you're just tired, or someone hits you behind, and you can get fucked up. I've been pretty lucky. I have really only had minor injuries. The worst ones have taken me out for like 3 weeks.
Yeah.
And so, like, nothing has been really major. I haven't had any big concussions, haven't broken bones.
Knock on wood, I've been good for the concussions too, actually.
Yeah. My partner is like worried because he's had like one rugby concussion. There was at practice, at a non-contact practice, where like someone just actually nudged him and he like hit the ground. Then like it wasn't even like a big hit, just wasn't expecting it because it was non-contact. And then just like his head hit the ground lightly, and then he didn't even realize he had a concussion until he couldn't figure out which way he was supposed to go. He's like, oh, my brain is not working.
This is not oh man. And well, you know what? The ground, was it in the summertime? Because our ground gets really hard.
No, this was indoor practice. This was this year in like January. But he gets like, the thing is, he's just had a lot of concussions through his life, which just means like, when you've had more, you are at risk of more, and concussions are really shitty that way. So I am very lucky.
Knock on wood, right? I'm miming knocking on my, there we go, knocking on our heads.
Yeah. No.
What were we talking about? It's concussions.
Right, injuries and concussions and major injuries. Really, like, if you're looking at really serious injuries, the player in the front row who's at the most risk, or really on the team, is the hooker. Yep. The hooker is the one who's in a really bad position where they can get seriously injured. And I've never seen it happen in any game I've ever been in. And they definitely...
It's because you're a good prop, man. Don't drop
I mean, I haven't seen it happen to any opposing hooker either. I've definitely, but there's a lot of pressure on the hooker right through the entire scrum, and that thing goes to shit. Like
Yeah, man.
the hooker's the one who's going to take it.
Yeah, because they can't do anything, man. They're just like, okay, well, I guess I'm riding on this ocean. Top and Flurl, yeah, top and Flurlin. That's what it is. That's what I just said. So it's about that fucked up. But yeah. Hooker's a rough position.
It is. But outside the hooker, you're generally not going to likely to be injured in the scrum just because it is so set. Yeah. And so, like, everyone gets in position. The ruck and maul are much more dangerous because the shit happens. They get messy. And as soon as they get messy, like, something can happen the wrong way.
Oh, yeah.
And that's how people get injured.
And you know what? Everyone's trying their damnedest. Or not, but
I just think like, well, I don't know what Rex you've been in.
Let me immediately rescind that comment. But yeah, no, like it with fatigue especially, right? Like you said, second half, man, it's rough. Everything gets sloppier, like so sloppy. Mm-hmm. Even the fit guys are starting to break a sweat, and I mean, we've been dying since warm up, but
that was covered in a previous episode. Props. Yes, your warm up is arriving at the pitch.
Yes, that little walk from the car to the pitch.
Yeah, it's like Pam. That's like half the work you can do.
Heart rate's right there. Yeah. But yeah. Oh man. But yeah. So I guess both of us are all pretty minor, just basically muscle tears, I guess. Like, yeah. Come to think of it.
I've had to play on shin splints before, which was interesting. I actually played decently. I wasn't supposed to play. I'm like, okay, I'm here. Like, I know we sometimes have trouble with numbers. I shouldn't really be playing, but like, it's shin splints. It's not going to kill me. So only put me in if you need me. And they're like, well, you're playing the whole game, Daniel. We have no subs. Go. I'm like, okay.
It's good for the bones, Daniel.
And then, like, I had to be, like, doing the drop kicks. And, like, my leg wasn't really bending correctly because of the shin splints. And, like, okay, this is happening now. I was still able to do the restarts all right. It was just sort of, like, weird and awkward. And, like, well, the ball made it 10 meters. Let's go with it. Okay.
So one of the things, though, and I think this is actually probably going to be a pretty good segue, because I'd forgotten about this, even though it was the most recent, I want to say, rugby-related injury. I was showing my son, who's a sturdy lad, how to do the alligator roll in a ruck to clear it out. And unbeknownst to me, in my lack of fitness from not training, and also he hunkered down in a really good way. And I mean, he's, like I said, he's a sturdy lad. When he hunkers, he's strong and hunkery. So I got the alligator roll, but I absolutely slipped a disc in my back. First back injury I've ever had. First one ever. So, with those types of injury, like, I was fine to walk home. I was like, oh, this is kind of sore, kind of a little fucked up. We walk home because the park was right by our place. And then later that night, everything starts seizing up. And then sure enough, for like the next 2 weeks, I had first of all, one of those IKEA chairs that's like it's the ubiquitous IKEA lounge chair with the
Pong?
Yeah, I think that's the one. It's the bent plywood with a fair bit of lumbar support. But big dudes like us, because there's no back support. Yeah, honk honk, fire truck. Because there's no back support, it sinks down. So that was a no good. So I piled up all my books from the library under it, well, a bunch of books, to level it. And then I put my feet up on my couch, and dude, I could not to sleep through the night. I had Advil, I had some melatonin, a little bit of whiskey, and that kept me still because every slightest movement was agony, dude. I tried sleeping on my bed. I could not lay out flat. It was wild. Like, I was like, oh my God, what have I done? But I think it took about 2.5 to 3 weeks for me to pretty much recover. And then, I'm fine now, which is great. But I read up on it, but as far as pain management, the Advil did nothing. Let me just tell you that. Fuck all.
The solution is alcohol and muscle relaxants.
Dude, yes. I do enjoy.
For those listening at home, talk to your doctor.
Yeah, we are not doctors. However, 2 extra strength Robaxa set and a little bit of Pinot, tremendous. And by a little bit, I mean, enough Pinot. But
2 bottles.
Yeah, maybe not 2 for me, but Yeah, no, definitely up there. Yeah, muscle relaxants, and so like after, but that's like, yeah, that's we're not even talking after game sore. Like that's you got to stay immobile for a bit. You know?
Yeah, that's definitely a little bit more serious. Although 2.5 to 3 weeks is actually pretty good recovery time for something like that.
It wasn't bad. Thankfully, I healed pretty quickly, even in my advanced age. But I'm gonna be a little more careful next time. But also, I'm training to not get hurt. Segue. But how do you do with like what for pain reduction? Because you can, I find in not maybe not in the back instance because I couldn't do fucking anything, but I've tweaked a knee, this and that. I actually found training kind of helped it if you do it carefully and right. It really does to strengthen ligatures or whatever around there. That does help. What do you think? Like, does that help you? How does that help you at all? Or
Yeah, I mean, in preparation for this, I have some sports medicine training because it's important. Injuries happen. I also went to a lot of the articles and looked at a lot of most recent medical research, and the whole idea of like bed rest is pretty much dead as a concept. It doesn't really help you heal. You want to be moving as early as possible and really strengthening as early as possible. Now, of course, you can overtrain. Overtraining is really easy when you have an injury. And so if you're sort of like, if things you could do are starting to feel difficult, that likely means you're overtraining. You need to be very gentle with the parts that are injured. It's often why there's a term now that we call relative rest, which is sort of exercising everything except for the injured part. So and for the injured part, you often want to do the, what's called the PF-ROM, which is the pain-free range of motion. And so that's like you move it in ways that don't hurt. And because if it hurts, you're likely making it worse. As I often like to say, no mild to moderate discomfort, no gain.
Ew. That I have tattooed. It's a long tattoo though. It's an awkwardly long tattoo.
I feel like we could shorten it for you, like
just a weird acronym. Yeah.
Just put it through like 7-zip and just put out it in binary.
There you go. I feel like that would be longer, Dan. like just like really long. But I mean, whatever. It's art. It's art, man. It's particularly funny because I am an artist. Back to your so on the back thing, and what I didn't mention was I didn't just lay there doped up. I was just asleep
for the first night.
Yeah, I did maybe for the first. No,
but if you can't move, you can't move. Like rest is still important.
Laying down sucked. I couldn't lay down at all. However, walking around was fine. Like I was cool walking around. It actually felt good to stay active. But yeah, like there were times where I'm like, oh, I should probably just stop moving for a sec.
Yeah, always listen to your body. This is and your doctor. As we said before, surprisingly, we are not medical professionals.
Shockingly.
They just have to listen to your body. If it's sort of like, oh, this is getting tired, stop. It's an injured part of your body. Give it rest. Let it get tired and then stop. And
yeah,
there's more and more evidence coming out showing like moving as much as you can without pain as early as possible is the best way for something to heal. And maintaining your fitness with everything else to really keep the rest of your body strong, because that has a whole bunch of other benefits to helping you heal. But yeah, so don't be dumb. Don't be one of those like dude bros like, yeah, I'm so tough, I can keep it, working out even though I'm injured, and just like my knee is fucked up, I'm gonna do these 500-pound squats. Or be like my partner who's like, oh, I threw out my back doing squats yesterday, but I'm still going to do full rugby practice with contact. Which, he actually didn't injure himself during the contact. He injured himself doing the pop-up from the ground, where you're lying on the ground, you have to pop up really quickly. Like wrenched his back doing that. Oh. And then decided to try doing it again.
Definitely the first time. It couldn't possibly happen again.
And then he was like, had supreme back pain for like 6 months. And was like, yeah, that sounds about right. I
Oh,
mean,
back pain, man. Oh, when you're carrying extra weight too, dude, like that's like it's key. It's pivotal, man.
yeah, do your, kettlebell swings, planks, Supermans. Protect your back. If you're a prop, protect your back. I mean, like everyone needs protected back. If you are a prop, protect your back.
Extra, man. Like, back strengthening is key. Oh, yeah, no, yeah, it's crazy. Well, I haven't deadlifted with a belt yet. Speaking of protecting the back, I've never lifted with a belt.
Well, the studies that I have seen, and I haven't. Last time I checked the medical literature on this was about like 6 months ago. The studies I've seen show that lifting with a belt actually increases your chance of injury.
Right, because when you're lifting without, I assume it's not supported, so you have to build that muscle, right? Like you have to exercise it.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's not exactly because the exercise, the muscle gets stronger even with the belt. The issue is you learn to rely on the belt because
Oh,
you can actually like get away with movements and weights that are you would not be able to do without the belt. That's why the belt's there. If it didn't help, if it didn't help you lift more, then you wouldn't be relying on it. And so you're actually not wearing the belt is more likely to injure you, but not when you're wearing it.
ah,
It's more likely to injure you because you can't have the belt on all the time.
right, and you get used to like this is my muscle memory of how I lift things,
Yeah.
and then suddenly you're not filling your diaphragm or whatever. Like again, I've never used the belt. I don't know how it actually helps, but yeah, then you've gotten used to that one behavior pattern, and then you
Mm-hmm.
definitely don't have it, and you try and lift like a little box or something, you're fucked.
Mm-hmm. So belts, I mean, like if you're going for like one rep max, one rep max, like sure, wear a belt, you'll be able to lift more, especially if you're doing competitive powerlifting. Um, Certainly they're super helpful. Like my deadlift is mostly stopped by my grip strength, so there's no real reason for me to use a belt. But
It's
if
that
you
too.
have straps, or if you're not having like piddly little arms like me, and you're actually
Other fingers. Like Homer Simpson with like the little fingers with the huge palm and a can. So okay, but here's the thing. So slight side tangent here, but we're talking kind of it's tangentially relevant. So
everything you say is relevant.
as the center of my universe and everything in it's relevant to me. No, so since I'm doing the training again, I found a couple of really great the coach, let's just call him Coach Mac. Coach Mac has showed me some really great body positioning and all that stuff. And so things have gotten better. I've been able to lift more. I have definitely found that my gut gets in the fucking way now with this proper technique. And it's actually to the point where I'm squatting down to get the bar, and I'm used to like a stiff leg Romanian deadlift. At which point, my gut's not really in a way. It's not really a problem. But this one, you're flaring your legs out a little bit. It's really cool. It actually feels better to lift like this, but it is more inconvenient if you're fat like me. But my fingers, like my hands, I can. Oh, it's harder for me to get a grip on the bar, and I end up lifting with a hook grip, and like I don't engage my thumbs. And when you're lifting like 300 plus pounds on just a hook grip, it's fucking crazy. So I chalked up for the first time at the last session. I'd never used chalk before either, even when I could grip the bar. So
I've
that's
had chalk sitting in my Amazon shopping cart for like 2 years. I'm like, yeah, I should get chalk at some point, and I never actually do. Every time I go to buy something, like, oh, well, I can't afford the chalk right now. Save for later, and then I just like put it back in my cart later. Like, okay, next time I order something from Amazon. This has been going on for 2 years. Anyways, but get back to your story.
it fucking works though. It works. Having never used chalk before, it's quite a bit of grip. I'm astonished because my grip strength maxes out at around 450 or something like that pounds on the deadlift, and then but like that's because the bar slips out, and I'm like, oh, maybe some fucking chalk will help. That I've actually done it. But what was it? Oh yeah, what's up with this? Okay, so I'm looking at like what is a reasonable amount of weight for me to lift given my weight and my novice stature or my, well, I've been training, I've deadlifted before, like I've been doing it for years, but I wouldn't say I'm anything above novice, if I'm honest. Right? I just happen to be able to lift up a pretty heavy weight.
I mean, we can calculate your Wilks score if you want.
Dude, it's terrible given my weight. That's what I'm saying. So given the weight that I am, looking at even like the charts, first of all, the strength charts only go up to 310 pounds. Fuck is that? What is that? But even at 310 pounds, I'm like, I should, like, if I do this and I become even intermediate, like, it's an astonishing amount of weight they say you could squat or bench or whatever. The bench in particular, I find is kind of ridiculous. Just because I don't bench a lot. Like, it's improved greatly, but I just never bothered benching because my chest is huge. And I'm like, whatever. I'm fine right now. But yeah, like the squat and everything. And it's just like, it's they expect that weight. That's crazy. I mean, maybe, I don't know. That's why I'm training, because I want to get up to that, like up the level where it's like stratospheric for humans.
Although, I mean, don't forget, a lot of these with the weights are assuming a certain type of body fat percentage.
True.
And while, you know, there's a certain extent to which having more body fat helps. Because like if you're at like, you know, 6 or 7% body fat, your body does not have that much energy to build muscle with.
No, you start. You're dead.
Well, no, I mean, humans can do, like, males can drop lower. Like, women have to have a higher percentage of body fat than men. Men can actually drop lower than like 6-7%, but like you have to be like, my goal is to have a very low body fat percentage.
Right.
But like, you know, if you're around like, you know, 25%, which is about where like I am, you know, a lot of that fat is not in any way helpful. I could, like, if I just like lost, you know, like 7% of my body weight in terms of my 7% of my body weight of the fat. Why can't I say a proper way to say this? Anyways, you know what I mean. I'm sorry, I could not express it well. I'm not a very good English major, apparently.
You're right beautifully, though. I can confirm. But yeah, so if you were to drop that percentage of body fat,
like that would not impede me at all. That would not impede any of my lifts. That would not impede my ability to grow muscle. That's just bad diet.
Which we will be talking about. I think that's our next episode, actually. So we're going a little further ahead of time, but you definitely, the name of it, and it's a great saying, is you can't outrun a bad diet.
Yes.
But we're not done talking about what the shit we're talking about right now. But I'm just saying.
The point being that, you know, you can't, you know, it's looking at yourself being like, wow, I'm 60 pounds more than the, you know, it's just this, like, that 60 pounds is not really helping you lift.
No, it's not a useful 60 pounds. Not doing anything for you. Yeah, like, were I 310 pounds of muscle at a 10% body fat, holy fuck. You know, like, that, okay, maybe, yeah, contextually.
So, you know, this is why, like, when I've done some minor powerlifting competitions, and where I have, like, when I did my squat competition, I had the biggest squat by about like 200 pounds, and I came in dead last among the men. Because they're like, well, we do it with your body weight. And I'm just like, well, you know, and I definitely, like, the person who won is this guy who's like as thick as my pinky, and he squatted like 300 pounds, and that is super impressive. Like, is he more skilled than me and deserved to win over me? Like, yeah, because he was squatting like almost twice his body weight. Actually, I squat almost twice his body weight too. I don't know how much he weighed. I don't know how much he weighed. Anyway, he was
away at strength. Yeah, like, it was, but it is impressive when those like super tiny dudes are just like crazy strong. You're
yeah.
Like, oh, okay.
I suppose if I was squatting like twice my body weight, that would be like 740, which is, you know, I'm not there. I'm like I'm not 3. I'm 580. So, like, okay, if he's probably squatting more than twice his body weight. And the point is, like, yeah, that guy, like, really impressive, very small, like, but very powerful. But then a lot of people, it's like, are they really more impressive, or do they just have a slightly better diet? Because, you know, they don't want to be as fat as me.
But okay, so question then. So at like 580, because I'm nowhere near that yet, but I do plan to get there.
To be fair, 580 was like before quarantine. I would not be able to squat that now.
Yeah.
I've been squatting with a 45-pound kettlebell, and so where I will be when I actually go back to powerlifting.
But okay, but as someone who has experienced that weight when you rack up like because I hated squatting until this guy showed me the low bar uh sort of squat position there, the low bar racking, and night and day, dude. Also loving that, but I'm getting used to these heavier weights now. How? So my question is, between like say 300 and 500 or whatever, are there key points where you're like, oh, this is insanely heavy, or are you getting used to it as you build up, or does it always feel heavy but you can do it? You know what I mean? Like there's that. It's not that it gets easier; you're just better at it. How does that, work? How does it feel?
So like the big thing is just not the actual lifting. The lifting, you're getting stronger as you're doing it. The big thing is that changes as you're going up in weight is your response after you've finished.
Oh, okay.
Like when my 1 rep max squat was like 400 pounds, doing it was pretty much just as hard as my 580 was now, or
Right.
before quarantine.
Yeah.
They were about equally hard. The issue is like I could do when I did that 400-pound squat, I put up re-rack the bar. I was like, yeah, that was really great.
Right.
Now I do the 580-pound squat. I'm like, okay,
You just
all right,
okay.
that was great. I did it. Give me a minute. I'm gonna go sit down. Okay. 5 minutes later, okay, I'm ready to do my next exercise. There was just some like it just completely wipes you out, and in a way that just you don't really experience when you're at a lower weight, even when that weight is still like really hard to lift.
Right. Okay.
So that's been the big thing for me, is just that sort of like that feeling of just being completely wiped out as you get bigger and heavier with your lifts. And you can even see that, like I think in a lot of like, the fail videos where these people start getting to these really big lifts, they will actually like pass out mid lift.
Yeah, I've never, first of all, I've never exerted myself quite that much. I don't think ever to the point of passing out. Well, having never done that, obviously I haven't. Fuck, man, that's crazy. Or like the dudes who puke. If you see the puke fountain on the deadlift, that's astonishing. I just, again, never have I ever been anywhere near that point. But that's crazy. Okay, so that was great. That's a good digression. Thank you for humoring me on that one.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I think we're talking about training, I guess. Well, we talk more about training on the next one, I guess, is really what it's going to be. So we can talk about that, but later.
Later. If you want to hear more about training, although I feel like a lot of our strength training we talked about, perhaps we should I'm sure over the next week I can find a whole bunch of new things to say for next week.
I think, you know what though, I think what's going to be great about next week, and this is a great, you know what, this is now our segue into ending the episode. We'll talk a little bit about what we're going to talk about, because we're not doctors, so we don't have a lot of tips. We just sort of talked about what's happening. As far as training goes, I think for us especially, and I think what people will, especially props out there, new fresh props, will understand or be able to benefit more from is our experiences with diet. The difference between finding, what is it that Alistair used to say to me? He used to say, finding the balance between the cannonball and the gunpowder, which was a brilliant, beautifully eloquent thing for my half exhausted brain to hear. That never left me. I think that's great, and it is like our experiences finding that balance, I think, will probably prove invaluable.
Now now that you've heard that metaphor, you clearly have no issues with diet ever again, or
never again. No, man. I tip top. So Eddie Hall. This is a guy. Do you know who Eddie Hall is?
I know who Eddie Hall is.
I discovered Eddie Hall.
Yeah, I mean, Eddie Hall, when he was at his peak strength, just like, hi. And now he's like dropped down. He's like now like just pure muscle and like ripped. I'm just like, I thought you were better when you were bigger.
But the thing about Eddie Hall is, he's at 360 and I guess he's training to fight the Mountain or something in a
Yeah,
boxing match.
that just seems like dude, bro, BS to me. I'm like, I mean, if you, it is a fun sort of challenge thing, but they seem to have like gotten really into it. It was like, yeah, this is getting
Oh, it
dude,
was sort
bro.
of goofy before, and I kind of really loved that. But his training regimen, like that dude, I remember that he went for like a scan, like a body scan, and his muscle density was off like freakish. The amount of muscle
Hmm.
density, because he's like 360 and he's got a six pack, but he's huge. And seeing this guy run
Yeah.
is the funniest thing because he's fast, but it's also like this just a ball of muscle running along. Like more power to him, obviously, or less because he's got all the power. But yeah, that was super dangerous when he did that record lift, and his nose started bleeding and like
Yeah.
almost kidney failure and shit. Like that's
Uh-huh.
crazy. And that's how not to train.
Yes. Like, don't shorten your lifespan for a sport. Uh,
Yeah, yeah, no kid.
sports are nice, but they are not that important. Uh,
Yeah, shout out. Okay, first of all, shout out to people having fucking rugby tournaments in the States right now, dude. Like, dude, there's been like Rugby USA, I think, has suspended a bunch of people for this one tournament, and then like in I don't know where it was. Fuck, where was it? It was a peach blossom tree rum and something tournament, but they're all playing it, dude. I'm like, oh my god. And then like there's been ones in like Chicago, I think, and it's just what are you doing? Take the season, go train. Take the season, just don't play the rugby, guys. Not right now. Sorry, that's my PSA for, not playing rugby right now. Oh, man. I mean, look, there's valid points being made of, yeah, okay, like they were in areas with low whatever, but I don't know, man. I don't
I
know.
mean, Ottawa is an area with a low spread, and it's starting to come back just because people are getting a little bit complacent. People are getting a little bit, stir crazy, and so they're going out more. And we're
Dude,
having our, biggest numbers since May.
yeah, I know, man. It's crazy. And that's exactly it. Is a lot of it is just like this frustration, but also just weariness of it, or you get used to it and complacency. You're absolutely right. Like it's just like,
Mhm.
maybe it's not a thingy thing and whatever, and I'm still alive and everyone's
I mean,
cool with it until your grandma dies. But
by year end, we're going to have, vaccines that are going to be through the testing. I mean, lots of them are already looking super promising.
yeah,
And while certainly, a vaccine is not silver bullet, uh,
step in
I'm
the right
sure.
direction.
Pardon?
Step in the right direction.
The silver right edition is great, and mostly because it's going to be really hard to get to actually coordinate everyone in the world getting this vaccine.
Yeah,
But if you're playing rugby and you're listening to this podcast, you're probably in a place where you're wealthy enough that you can get the vaccine and wait like another 4 months.
just give
And
it a
then when spring and summer will come back, or if you're if you're in the southern hemisphere, I'm sorry because like you're going to be missing like most of your season still. So do we have any Australian listeners?
we do, and
Okay.
some Kiwis as well. Happy to say, and a dude in India. Hey, guy in India. Thank you. that's that's awesome, a dude. Yeah,
So I apologize to the people in Australia. Actually, the Kiwis might be okay because Kiwis have like almost no cases. Because
yeah.
they actually like I think they completely eliminated, but then there's some Kiwis who are coming back. But I don't think there's been any community transmission. At least not last time. Last time I checked, there hasn't been. It looks like you're looking it up right now. So you
Trying
can.
to, yeah.
So yeah, if you're in New Zealand, you might be able to play. I don't know exactly about the New Zealand rules, but I know Australia had quite a few cases come back. Oh, it looks like New Zealand has recently had a couple cases, but still very small because we're like talking about like at
Oh,
the
dude.
most like 10 cases for the entire country.
Yeah, like it's in. Oh, I think they're at like 14. So I mean, okay, like good on you, New Zealand, for nipping that shit in the bud, and your prime minister. Who I always forget the name. She's awesome. Anyway, she did a great job. Uh, and they canceled their tournament. I do have to watch the rest of those though. That was pretty. The Super Rugby AO, yeah. Honest for me to wrap my mouth around the vowels. Can't do it. That was a pretty good Australian accent, I think. Actually, I think I did
I
that.
mean, yeah, totally, definitely. So, Australian listeners, if you want to write hate mail, let me get.
Just be sure to put all the vowels in that you always speak. Like it's a what is it? A diphthong? Is where like they add all the vowels together. And I love it. I love listening to Australian people. I love your accent, guys. It's a little bit of mockery, but I love it. I'm sure I sound like I'm just talking so slowly, like, oh yeah. Eh?
And if you want, we can talk faster. No one will be able to understand us.
That's right. Just speed it up, and it'll be great, and then we'll have a good time, and the podcast will be done in about 5 minutes.
Perfect. Let's do it. Oh, Matt.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I just think I have a friend who's blind, and like she will speed up the sound and everything, and it sounds like total gibberish to me. Like she's listening to things at like 400%. I'm like, you can hear them. She's like, yeah, it's easy. I'm like,
oh God. Well, I've read that or I saw somewhere on some fucking article. Anyways, it was like you should watch your YouTube videos at twice speed because it'll save you time and you'll still get just as much nuance as everything. And I was watching Blade Runner 2049 or whatever it was, which was a good movie. But they spoke so slowly, like they're like blah blah. You're like, oh, dude, wrap it up. A beautiful movie though. Very reminiscent, unfortunately, of the forest fires that are burning up the west coast in the U.S. But this is turning into like a news thing. We're talking about rugby. I think we're done though, right? Are we done? We're done. Yeah.
yeah. So basically, we're just saying I'm sorry to the Australians and Kiwis
Apologies.
and Argentinians and anyone else in the Southern Hemisphere who might be getting the vaccine too late for the rugby season. But you at least got most of your last rugby season. So
I mean, it's won't make you feel better, but kind of. You guys are great. Alrighty. Well, I think I'm gonna sign off, Dan. Let's sign off.
All right, let's sign off.
All right. Goodbye, Dan.
Goodbye, Dan.
Goodbye, everybody.